Well, the fight is over, Hilltop is burned down, and Alpha has won. It's been a wonderful season. Thank you all so much for watching. Wait. Of course that's not how it ends. It's just the beginning. We pick up where the last episode ended during the battle at the Hilltop. This week's episode starts here, then splits into multiple stories. So sit down, hit that subscribe button, and listen in as we go over all the tips, nods, adaptations, and winks to the source material. Hilltop is burning, walkers are breaking through. The communities do their best to fight them off, but with a constant flow of fire arrows raining down on them and a constant flow of walkers in front of them, they're overrun very quickly. Things go from bad to worse when Whisperers join the fight, forcing them to flee their home. This battle was adapted from issues 159 to 161 of the comics. Now, it'd be easy to just say, Hilltop being attacked and burned down was adapted from the comics, and leave it at that. But where's the fun in that if we don't point out specific concepts of this fight and where they were inspired from? First concept is the biggest one, Hilltop burning down. In the comics, after the Whisperers attack with their horde, flaming arrows are continuously sent over from their archers. This causes building after building to catch fire, making the actual fighting with the dead far more dangerous. During the fight in this episode, we also saw several Whisperers in the mix, attacking amongst the dead. This also happens in the comics, but most of them were taken out by Lydia after several tried to capture her. At some point in the fight, we saw Ezekiel escaping with the children. In the comics, there's only one child mentioned, and that's Maggie's child Herschel. It's Sophia, though, who's still alive, who runs in to save the terrorized Tot. Maggie and Carl catch up to her, help her find a way out, but Carl stays behind to look for others who have not escaped. This leads us to our next point. In the midst of battle, we saw Eugene running into a burning building to retrieve the radio. In the comics, Carl gets injured inside the burning building and knocked unconscious while trying to help others escape. Aaron hears he's still inside the building and runs in to save him. Next is a scene where we see Magna walking amongst Alpha's horde. This was inspired by the first assault on Alexandria in the comics. After Dwight's army defeats the first wave sent against them, they retreat into the woods and kill a Whisperer. Once the dead pass, they drag him into the woods and Dwight takes off his skin mask. The rest find ways to steal outfits and use them to sneak into the horde to start killing Whisperers off one by one. The last little bit was Earl getting bit. While the actual bite wasn't shown if it was in the Alexandria fighting or later on when escaping with the children, he still bit on the arm. A similar thing happens in the comics during the Hilltop battle, but it's Connie who gets bit. They try to save her though by having Magna chop off the infected limb. So that wraps up the actual battle. Even though the fighting was only about 5 minutes, there was a lot of little nods and winks to the source material that we had to mention. The biggest change up AMC made though was the outcome. In the comics, Maggie and the residents of Hilltop won. There were many losses, but in the end they were victorious. In AMC's version though, it was Alpha who won, causing the survivors to flee into various groups, which we'll go over right now. Gamma, Alden, Kelly flee with the infant, where Alden forgives Gamma just in time for her to sacrifice herself. Eugene gets to see some hot girl on girl action during his escape with Carol, Yumiko, and Magma. Daryl, Rosita, and Jerry escape with the bulk of the survivors and play hide and seek with Ezekiel. Earl and Judith escape to the cabin in the woods with the rest of the children. Okay, so as mentioned before, the Hilltop won the fight in the comics, so no one had to escape. There was one scene though that was a nod to the comics other than Earl, which we already mentioned. After saving Alden and Kelly, Gamma gets a gut feeling that Beta is lurking close by. During their talk, she rips off a piece of his mask and in response, he slashes her stomach open. During the exchange, a fellow Whisperer recognizes Beta and sees part of his face, confirming his suspicion as to Beta's real identity.
It's you.
Beta feels he has no choice but to silence the man for good.
Your voice sounded familiar, but...
Okay, so this scene looks to be pieced together from two parts. First, with Gamma getting stabbed in the stomach, it's very similar to when Beta knifed Aaron in issue 154 after him and Michonne crossed into their territory looking for Negan. This was also before the assault on Hilltop. It's worth knowing that there are two main characters stabbed by Beta. First was Aaron, who was just mentioned and survived. Second was Gabriel, who falls from his watchtower and gets stuck in the ladder. He did not survive. The second part of this was Beta killing the Whisperer for seeing his face. After the first assault on Alexandria fails in issue 159 of the comics, Beta is knocked out by Negan. A few Whisperers carry him to safety where they ask each other if any of them has actually seen Beta's face. One of them goes to remove his mask when a seemingly unconscious Beta leans up and kills him. So clearly Beta has some issue with people seeing his real face. Maybe dude has some really bad acne? Nah, we find out later he's actually famous and doesn't want anyone to know who he really is. Last storyline for this episode. After the fall of Hilltop, Negan is given task after task by his alpha and seems to fumble each one. He does succeed in his last task though and captures the missing Lydia. He brings Alpha to where she's supposedly going to be at, trying to talk some sense into her along the way. When his reasoning once again fails, he tells Alpha it's time for them to break up for good. Okay, so let's hit the big one right away. Negan slashing Alpha's throat and cutting her head off was directly adapted from the comics, but it happened a bit earlier on. It's actually this act by Negan that caused the attack on Hilltop. In issue 156, Negan tries to save a Whisperer from being raped. Later that night, Alpha goes over to talk with him, where he calls her out on the Whisperer way of life, saying the whole thing is bullshit.
I lost somebody that was close to me. The thing is, when she was gone, I didn't feel much of anything anymore. You know? I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel anything. I was just here. And that is my strength. Now me, I am dead to this world, but you, see, you are pretending. You think that it makes you strong to say that emotions aren't real, that we are animals. That is bullshit.
As soon as Alpha seems to be warming up to him, he does a 180 and slashes her throat. Once she's dead, he cuts her head off and lets her real motive be known. Right away, there are some contrasts though. We already discussed the time frame of this. In AMC version, Negan and Carol seem to have this all planned out from the start.
Took you long enough.
In the comics though, this whole plan was Negan's and Negan's alone, and it wasn't for revenge, but was to earn Rick's trust. So I think this is enough for one video. Which of these was your favorite comic book parallels? Is there something I missed that you noticed? The Whisperer War arc is just about over. There's one last major assault, and then we can move on to the next story arc with the Commonwealth. Leave your thoughts and comments in the section below, and until next time, keep on walking.